The night shift at St. Helena's Hospital had its own rhythm. Quiet, steady, almost comforting. Machines beeped softly in the background. Nurses whispered at the station, and the smell of disinfectant mixed with the faint aroma of burnt coffee. For Nurse Emily Parker, it was another night of caring for new mothers and fragile newborns, her favorite kind of work. Emily was just 24, fresh out of nursing school, with a determination that had quickly earned her respect among her peers. She loved her job, the late-night feedings, the midnight charting, the quiet reassurance she could offer to scared new parents. That night she was caring for Jenna, a young mother recovering from a complicated C-section. Jenna's newborn slept peacefully in a bassinet near the bed, his tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Emily checked the vitals, smiled softly, and jotted down her notes. She didn't notice it at first, the way the halls had gone unusually silent, the absence of the security guard who usually sat at the front desk, humming to himself. It wasn't until she heard the sound, heavy boots pounding against the linoleum floor, that her instincts kicked in. Her head jerked toward the maternity ward door just as it swung, open hard enough to slam against the wall. A man dressed in dark clothes stepped in, his face hidden behind a ski mask, his gloved hands gripping a black handgun. Emily froze for half a heartbeat. The man moved with purpose, scanning the room like he knew exactly what he was looking for. Jenna stirred awake, her confused whisper turning into a terrified gasp when she saw him. Emily didn't have time to think, only act. She shoved the bassinet behind her with one swift motion, positioning her body between the baby and the intruder. "What do you want?" Emily demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. The man raised the gun and took a step closer. And in that split second, Emily lunged. The first shot cracked like thunder in the hallway. The impact hit Emily's shoulder, knocking her sideways, but she didn't stop. Her hands locked on the man's wrist, forcing the muzzle away from the crib. The second shot burned through her side, hot and blinding, but adrenaline flooded her veins, numbing the pain just enough to keep her standing. Somewhere behind her, Jenna was screaming, the baby wailing, but Emily's entire world narrowed to the masked man and the weapon in his hand. A third shot rang out, grazing Emily's thigh. She felt the warm sting of blood soaking through her scrubs. But she pushed harder, slamming the attacker against the wall. He cursed, trying to shake her off. Two more shots exploded, one grazing her back, another shattering an IV stand inches from her head. The metallic clatter of falling, equipment mixed with the sound of her own ragged breathing. Still, she didn't let go. "Run!" Emily shouted over her shoulder, and Jenna obeyed, dragging the bassinet toward the far corner and shoving it under the bed. The man jerked his arm free, shoving Emily hard. She hit the floor, her palms sliding in a smear of her own blood. Dizziness crashed over her, her vision blurring, but she clawed toward him anyway, trying to grab the weapon before he could turn it back toward the crib. An alarm finally screamed down the hall. Someone must have hit the panic button. The man cursed again, glancing toward the door. He wasn't expecting backup this fast. Emily tried to rise, but her legs buckled. Still, she put herself between him and the baby, even from the floor. That was when the sound of boots echoed again, heavier, faster, coming closer like a freight train. The attacker turned his head, just as a new figure barreled through, the double doors like a force of nature. Colonel Alexander, Alex Hayes, had seen war. 30 years in the Marines had taught him to tell the difference between a false alarm and the real thing, and this was no drill. He had been visiting his injured son in the trauma ward one floor below when he heard the shots. His body moved before his mind caught up. He sprinted for the stairs, his boots pounding with the same rhythm as they had in Fallujah and Kandahar. When he hit the maternity ward, he saw her, a young nurse bleeding on the floor, fighting to stay upright. His eyes flicked to the attacker, gun still raised, and in that instant, something primal took over. Alex didn't shout. He didn't warn. He charged. The man swung the gun toward him, but Alex was faster. He slammed into him like a linebacker, sending the weapon skittering across the tile. In one brutal move, Alex twisted the man's arm behind his back and drove him, face first, into the floor. "Don't move," Alex growled, his voice low and deadly. The man struggled, but Alex's knee pinned him with the kind of pressure that made it clear this fight was over. "Nurse!" Alex barked, glancing toward Emily. "Stay with me. You're not going out on my watch." Emily's lips moved soundlessly. She gestured weakly toward the bed. "Baby?" Alex's eyes softened just a fraction. He turned his head and spotted the terrified mother crouched under the bed, clutching her child. "You're safe," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He pulled a zip tie from his pocket, a habit from years in combat zones, and bound the attacker's wrists before dragging him out into the hall. When security finally arrived, they found Alex standing over the subdued man like a sentinel, blood on his hands, his jaw set like stone. "Get her to surgery," he snapped, pointing to Emily. "Now!" The next hours blurred into organized chaos. Emily was rushed into the operating room, doctors shouting vitals as they wheeled her down the hall. Alex followed, barking orders to the arriving police and military MPs, making sure the attacker was taken into custody. Word spread through the hospital like wildfire. A nurse had taken 5 bullets, protecting a mother and newborn. By the time dawn broke, Marines were arriving in groups, some still in uniform, some off-duty but wearing their colors with pride. Alex stood vigil outside the OR, arms crossed, his expression grim but focused. He'd been on battlefields, seen good men fall, but something about Emily's courage hit him differently. She hadn't been trained for this. She didn't have body armor or backup, but she fought anyway. When the surgeon finally came out, pulling off bloody gloves, the hallway went silent. "She's alive," the doctor said. "She shouldn't be, but she is." Alex exhaled slowly, tension leaving his body for the first time in hours. When Emily was brought out of recovery, pale but breathing, Alex was the first face she saw. He crouched beside her bed, his voice quiet but steady. "You held the line tonight," he said. "You did what Marines do. You protected the innocent. You have my respect, nurse. And that's not something I give lightly." By sunrise, the hospital parking lot looked like a military formation. More than 500 Marines stood outside, boots polished, uniforms crisp, their presence turning the quiet neighborhood into something out of a ceremony. Inside, staff whispered in awe as they wheeled Emily toward a window. When she saw them, tears filled her eyes. She tried to sit up, but Alex put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "They're here for you," he said softly. Jenna, the mother Emily had saved, stepped forward holding her baby. "He has a name now," she said, her voice breaking. "Alexander." "After the man who saved us." Alex looked away for a moment, swallowing hard. Outside, the Marines raised their hands in a unified salute, the morning sun flashing on medals and dog tags. The hospital staff fell silent, some even wiping their eyes. Emily, weak but smiling, lifted her hand as much as the IV allowed, returning the salute. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She had faced death and won. She had chosen to stand when running would have been easier. And now, an entire branch of the military had come to let her know she was one of them. For Emily Parker, that morning wasn't just survival. It was the day she became part of something far greater, a legacy of courage that would never be forgotten.